My name is Merritt Calloway, and I'm 72 years old. If you're listening to this, you probably didn't expect to hear a woman my age talk about falling in love like a teenager. But that's exactly what happened to me 3 years ago, and I'm going to tell you something that might shock you. The secret I kept for 47 years nearly destroyed the greatest gift life ever gave me. So while you're subscribing and hitting that like button, let me tell you about the day I walked into a grocery store and saw the one man I thought I'd never see again. The man I left standing at a train station in 1976, holding an engagement ring I never let him give me. I wasn't looking for love that Tuesday morning in March. I was looking for decent tomatoes. After Richard died, my husband of 43 years, I developed these strange little routines to fill the silence in my house. Tuesday mornings meant Kroger at exactly 9:30, right when they restocked the produce. I'd become the kind of woman who knew the delivery schedule of vegetables. That's what grief does to you. It makes you care deeply about things that don't matter, because caring about things that do matter hurts too much. I was squeezing an avocado when I heard someone say, "Still testing fruit like you're defusing a bomb, I see?" The avocado dropped from my hand. I knew that voice. I'd know it in a hurricane, in a crowd of thousands, after 50 years of silence. It was deeper now, weathered by decades, but it carried the same gentle humor that used to make me laugh until my sides ached. I turned around slowly, my heart doing something it hadn't done since Richard's funeral. It was actually feeling something other than a dull, persistent ache. "Dalton?" I whispered. He stood there with a shopping basket hanging from one arm, wearing a brown cardigan that had seen better days and jeans that were probably older than my grandchildren. His hair had gone completely silver, and there were lines around his eyes that told stories I'd never heard. But those eyes, those warm hazel eyes that used to look at me like I was the only woman in the world, they hadn't changed at all. "Hello, Merritt," he said softly. "It's been a while." A while? 47 years was a while the way the Grand Canyon was a ditch. I couldn't finish the sentence. My mind was racing through 1,000 questions. "You're here? You're alive? You're shopping for groceries in Asheville, North Carolina, like this is normal?" "I moved here 6 months ago," he said, answering the question I couldn't ask. "After Denise passed. Our daughter lives up in Weaverville with her family. And I didn't want to be in Cleveland anymore. Too many memories." "Richard died 18 months ago," I heard myself say. "Heart attack." We stood there in the produce section, two elderly people holding our shopping baskets, while the world continued around us. A young mother pushed past with a toddler screaming about Lucky Charms. The store's sound system played an acoustic version of a song I didn't recognize. Someone dropped a jar of pickles 3 aisles over. "I'm sorry," Dalton said. "I really am. That must have been... I'm sorry. I'm sorry about Denise, too." What I didn't say, "I'm sorry I broke your heart in 1976. I'm sorry I married Richard 6 months after I told you I needed time to think. I'm sorry I was too afraid to love you the way you deserved. I'm sorry for 47 years of wondering what if." "Would you?" he started, then stopped. Even now, even after all these years, I could see him gathering his courage the way he used to before asking me to dance. "Would you want to get coffee sometime? Catch up?" Every reasonable part of my brain said no. I was 72 years old. My husband was barely cold in his grave, as my sister Darlene would say with her usual delicacy. I had a routine now. I had my Tuesday tomatoes and my Wednesday bridge club and my Thursday phone calls with my daughter Rachel. I had a life that was small and manageable and safe. But when I opened my mouth, what came out was, "How about now?" We sat in a corner booth at a coffee shop called the Brew Leaf, which seemed to be staffed entirely by people who could have been our great-grandchildren. Dalton ordered black coffee. I ordered a latte that cost $7 and came with some kind of leaf design in the foam. $7 for coffee, Dalton muttered. Remember when we could see a movie and get dinner for that? We're old, I said, surprised at how easy it felt to smile. We're allowed to complain about prices. It's basically our job now. He laughed, and the sound of it did something dangerous to my heart. It reminded me of summer nights at the lake, of dancing to Fleetwood Mac on his parents' porch, of the way he used to laugh at my terrible jokes just to make me feel clever. So, he said, wrapping his hands around his mug, 47 years, that's a lot of life to catch up on. You first, I said, because I was a coward. I'd always been a coward. He told me about his life. He'd married Denise in 1978, and they'd had 2 daughters, Maureen and Patricia. He'd worked as a civil engineer, built bridges mostly, all over the Midwest. Denise had been a teacher, 3rd grade, loved it until she retired. They'd had a good life, he said, a solid life. They'd traveled a bit, seen the Grand Canyon, spent a winter in Arizona, took a cruise to Alaska for their 30th anniversary. And then, 3 years ago, she started forgetting things, he said quietly. Little things at first, where she'd put her keys, our grandson's name. By the end, she didn't know who I was anymore. He stared into his coffee. Early onset Alzheimer's. She was only 69 when she passed. Oh, Dalton. I reached across the table and put my hand on his. His skin was warm, spotted with age, but his fingers were the same fingers that used to hold mine during scary movies. It's okay, he said, but his voice was thick. Well, it's not okay, but it is what it is. He looked up at me. Your turn. Tell me about your 47 years. So I did. I told him about Richard, who had been a good man, a kind man, an insurance adjuster who never missed a day of work in 38 years. I told him about Rachel and Simon, my 2 children, and about my 4 grandchildren, who I mostly saw on FaceTime now because Rachel lived in Oregon and Simon lived in Georgia. I told him about teaching high school English for 26 years, about retirement, about the garden I'd tried and failed to maintain, about Richard's heart attack in the supermarket parking lot, different supermarket, I noted, and how he died before the ambulance came. What I didn't tell him, that I'd thought about Dalton every single year on August 14th, the day I'd left him at that train station. That I'd driven past his parents' house every time I visited my hometown until they sold it in 1989. That I'd looked him up on Facebook once, 7 years ago, just to see his face, and then closed the browser feeling like I'd betrayed Richard, even though Richard was sitting right next to me, reading the newspaper and asking what I wanted for dinner. Why did you leave me, Merritt? The question came out of nowhere, quiet and direct. Not angry, just asking. I'd known it was coming. You don't run into your first love after 47 years and not address the elephant in the room. But I still wasn't ready. I was scared, I said finally. The truth felt strange in my mouth, like speaking a foreign language I'd once been fluent in. You wanted to move to Seattle. You had that job offer, and you were so excited. And all I could think was, what? He asked gently. That I wasn't brave enough to follow you. The words came out in a rush now. My whole life was in Ohio. My parents, my friends, my teaching job at the local high school. And you were asking me to leave everything and move across the country to a city I'd never even visited. And I panicked. I asked you to marry me, Merritt. I was 24 years old, and I'd loved you since I was 19. And I thought, he trailed off, shaking his head. I thought we'd figure it out together. I know. My eyes were burning now. I know you did. But I was 23 and terrified and stupid, and I convinced myself that you'd be better off without me holding you back. So you married Richard. 6 months later, at a courthouse, my mother cried because she'd always wanted a big wedding. I laughed, but it came out bitter. Richard was safe. He wanted to stay in Ohio, work a normal job, have a normal life. He never asked me to be brave. Dalton was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Did you love him?" "Yes," I said immediately, because it was true. Not the way I stopped myself. But yes, I loved him. He was good to me. We had a good marriage. But you thought about me? It wasn't a question. He said it like he already knew. Every August 14th, I admitted. How did you know? Because I thought about you every August 14th, too. He smiled sadly. Denise knew. She was a smart woman. She never said anything, but she knew. We sat there in that overpriced coffee shop, two old people with gray hair and reading glasses and prescription medications in our purses and pockets, mourning the lives we didn't live. Why didn't you come after me? I asked. The question had haunted me for 47 years. After I left, why didn't you fight for me? Because you asked me not to. He looked at me steadily. That day at the train station, you said you needed me to let you go. You said if I loved you, I'd respect your choice. So I did. I'd forgotten I'd said that. Or maybe I'd blocked it out, the way we block out the moments we're most ashamed of. I was wrong, I whispered. I should have been brave. I should have gotten on that train with you. Maybe, he finished his coffee. Or maybe everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to. Maybe we each got the lives we were meant to have. Do you really believe that? I don't know, he said honestly. But I have to believe something, or I'll spend whatever time I have left being bitter about the time I already lost. We started meeting for coffee every Tuesday, then Tuesdays and Thursdays, then almost every day. I didn't tell anyone at first, not my daughter, not my sister, not my friends at Bridge Club. I told myself it was because there was nothing to tell. We were just two old friends catching up. But the truth was, I was afraid. Afraid of what they'd say, afraid of what it meant, afraid of the way my heart jumped every time my phone buzzed with a text from him. Dalton and I fell into an easy rhythm. We'd meet at the Brew Leaf, or sometimes we'd walk around the botanical gardens or drive up to the Blue Ridge Parkway if the weather was nice. We talked about everything, our children, our dead spouses, politics, books, the absolute mystery of why young people put pineapple on pizza. But we didn't talk about us, not really. We skirted around it like dancers avoiding the center of the floor. Until one day in June, 3 months after that first grocery store encounter, when Dalton invited me to his house for dinner. He lived in a small ranch house in West Asheville, the kind of place a man lives in when he's trying to downsize his life along with his grief. It was tidy but impersonal, bare walls, furniture that looked like it came from a rental store, nothing that said home. I'm not much of a cook anymore, he admitted, pulling a lasagna from the oven. Denise was the cook. I mostly just heat things up. It smells wonderful, I said, and it did. The whole house smelled like garlic and tomatoes and something I hadn't felt in a long time, possibility. We ate dinner on his back porch, watching the sunset over the mountains. He told me about the bridge he was most proud of, a span outside of Toledo that he'd worked on for 3 years. I told him about the student who'd sent me a letter last year, 20 years after graduation, telling me I'd changed her life by making her read To Kill a Mockingbird. You were meant to be a teacher, he said. Even back then I knew it. You had this way of explaining things that made everything make sense. You were meant to build things, I countered. You were always drawing bridges and buildings in your notebooks instead of taking notes. Still am, he admitted. He stood up and went inside, coming back with a sketchbook. I can't help it, even now. He showed me his drawings, beautiful, detailed sketches of bridges and buildings, some real, some imaginary. His hands trembled slightly as he turned the pages. Arthritis, he explained. It made drawing harder now. These are beautiful, Dalton, I said softly. You're still an artist. I'm an old man with shaky hands, he said, but he was smiling. The sun had fully set now, and the porch was dark, except for the light spilling out from the kitchen window. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog was barking. A car drove past, its headlights briefly illuminating us before moving on. Merritt, Dalton said, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you believe in second chances? My heart stopped. What do you mean? I mean, he set down his sketchbook and turned to face me fully. I mean, we're old. I'm 74 years old. I have high blood pressure and arthritis, and my knees sound like bubble wrap when I stand up. You're 72, I supplied, with reading glasses and a medication schedule that takes up a full page of my planner. Right, we're old. We've lived whole lives. We've buried people we loved. We should be settling into some kind of peaceful retirement, doing crossword puzzles and complaining about our aches and pains. But, I prompted, because I could hear it coming. But when I'm with you, I don't feel old. I feel like I'm 24 again, getting ready to ask the prettiest girl at the lake if she wants to go dancing. He reached over and took my hand. These past 3 months have been the happiest I've been in years, maybe decades, and I can't help thinking that maybe we get a second chance. Maybe this is it. I wanted to say yes. God, I wanted to say yes so badly. But there was something stopping me, a weight in my chest that had been there for 47 years. There's something I need to tell you, I said. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Okay, he said carefully. I'm listening. This was it. The secret I'd kept for 47 years. The real reason I'd left him at that train station. I was pregnant, I said. When I left you at the train station, I was 6 weeks pregnant. The silence that followed was deafening. I didn't know for sure until a week after, I continued, the words tumbling out now. But I suspected. I'd been feeling sick and my period was late, and I knew, and I panicked because we weren't married and it was 1976, and I was so scared of what people would think, what my parents would say. Merritt, I need to finish. My hands were shaking now. I need you to know all of it. I left you because I was scared. Scared of moving to Seattle, yes, but more scared of telling you I was pregnant. Scared you'd feel trapped. Scared you'd marry me out of obligation instead of love. Scared I'd ruin your life the way I thought I'd ruined mine. What happened? His voice was barely a whisper. I miscarried, I said. 3 weeks later. I was alone in my apartment and I started bleeding, and by the time I got to the hospital, it was over. I looked down at our joined hands. I never told anyone, not my mother, not my sister, not Richard. No one knew except me. And you carried that alone for 47 years? I told myself it was for the best, that it was a sign I'd made the right choice. But the truth is, I've never forgiven myself for being too scared to tell you, for running away, for taking that choice away from you. Dalton pulled his hand away, and my heart broke. This was it. This was where he'd realize I wasn't worth the trouble, wasn't worth the second chance. But then he stood up and held out his hand to me. "Come here," he said gently. I stood, confused, and he pulled me into his arms. He held me the way he used to hold me 47 years ago, carefully, like I was something precious. I buried my face in his cardigan and cried 47 years of tears I'd never let myself cry. "I'm so sorry," I sobbed. "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you. I'm sorry I was such a coward." "Shh," he murmured, stroking my hair. "You were scared. You were 23 years old and scared. That doesn't make you a coward." "But I ruined everything." "No." He pulled back enough to look at me, his hands on my shoulders. Life happened. Life happened to both of us. We made choices, good ones and bad ones. We loved other people. We had children and careers and full lives. And maybe it wasn't the life we planned, but it was still a life worth living. How can you not hate me? Because I know you, Merritt Calloway. I knew you when you were 23, and I know you now. And I know that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time. He smiled sadly. And because I've spent too much of my life being angry about the past. I don't want to spend whatever time I have left doing the same thing. So what do we do now? Now? He brushed a tear from my cheek. Now we decide if we're brave enough to take that second chance we've been talking about. I told my daughter first. "You're dating?" Rachel's voice over the phone was a mix of surprise and something else. Concern, maybe, or worry? Mom, Dad's only been gone 18 months. I know how long it's been, sweetheart. It just seems fast. I wanted to tell her it wasn't fast at all, that I'd been waiting 47 years for this. But that was a conversation too complicated for a phone call. His name is Dalton, I said instead. We knew each other a long time ago, before I met your father. We ran into each other at the grocery store. How long ago? Before you were born, before I married your father. There was a pause. Wait, was he... Mom, were you in love with him? Yes, no point in lying now. I was very much in love with him. Does he make you happy? The question surprised me. Yes, I said, he does. Then I'm happy for you. Rachel's voice softened. Dad would want you to be happy, you know. He wouldn't want you to be alone. I know, though I wasn't sure I did know. Richard and I had never talked about what would happen after. We'd both assumed we'd go together the way couples do in movies. My sister Darlene was less understanding. You're making a fool of yourself, she said over lunch at our usual diner. Running around with some old boyfriend like you're teenagers. What will people think? I don't care what people think, Darlene. Well, you should. You're 72 years old, not some young thing with her whole life ahead of her. Exactly, I said firmly. I'm 72 years old, which means I have, maybe 20 good years left if I'm lucky? Maybe 10? Maybe 5? I'm not going to waste them worrying about what the ladies at Bridge Club think. Darlene stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Who are you, and what have you done with my sister? I'm still me, I said. I'm just braver than I used to be. And I was. For the first time in my life, I was choosing what I wanted instead of what was safe. Dalton and I went public, as it were. We held hands at the grocery store. We went to dinner at nice restaurants. We took a weekend trip to Charleston and stayed in separate hotel rooms, which felt both responsible and vaguely ridiculous. We're in our 70s, Dalton said, laughing as he walked me to my room. We should probably be past the separate room stage. Probably, I agreed, but I'm still learning how to be brave. Give me time. He kissed me goodnight, our first real kiss in 47 years, and it was nothing like I remembered. It was better, slower, softer. The kiss of two people who knew that time was precious and shouldn't be wasted. By October, 6 months after that first meeting in the produce section, I'd sold my house and moved into Dalton's place. Rachel was worried. Simon was confused. Darlene predicted disaster, but I didn't care. We made it a home together. I hung pictures on the walls, photos of our children and grandchildren mixed together like they'd always been one family. Dalton built bookshelves for my collection of paperbacks. I planted a garden in the backyard, and this time, with Dalton's help, it actually grew. We settled into a new routine. Morning coffee on the porch. Crossword puzzles together. He was better at them than me. Walks around the neighborhood, moving slower now, but moving together. Dinner with his daughter on Sundays. Video calls with my daughter on Wednesdays. And every night, before we went to sleep, we'd lie in bed and talk about our days, about our past, about the life we were building now. Do you ever regret it? I asked him one night. The life you had with Denise? No, he said without hesitation. I loved her. She gave me 2 beautiful daughters and 40 years of happiness. I don't regret a single day of it. But do you ever wonder what life would have been like if I'd gotten on that train with you? Sometimes, he admitted, but wondering about what might have been doesn't change what was. And what was, both my life with Denise and your life with Richard, was good. Maybe not the life we planned, but good nonetheless. And now? Now? He pulled me closer, my head resting on his shoulder. Now we get to write a new chapter. Not as young people starting out, but as old people who know how rare this is. How precious. It happened on a Tuesday, of course. Tuesdays seemed to be the day my life changed. We were at the doctor's office for what was supposed to be a routine checkup for Dalton. He had been having headaches, nothing serious, probably just stress, or maybe he needed new glasses. But then the doctor ordered an MRI, and then another test, and then she was sitting us down in her office with a box of tissues on the desk between us, which is never a good sign. "It's a brain tumor," she said gently. "Glioblastoma, stage 4. The world stopped. "How long?" Dalton asked. His voice was calm, steady. He was handling this better than I was. "With treatment, maybe 12 to 18 months. Without treatment," she trailed off. We all knew what without treatment meant. "And with treatment, what's my quality of life?" "It's aggressive treatment, radiation, chemotherapy. There will be side effects, fatigue, nausea, possible cognitive impacts." Dalton nodded slowly, taking it all in. Then he looked at me. Really looked at me, like he was memorizing my face. "Can we have a moment?" he asked the doctor. She left us alone in that sterile office with its diplomas on the wall and its motivational posters about health and wellness. "Merritt?" "No," I said. Don't you dare say goodbye to me. We fight this. We do the treatment, we fight." "And spend what time I have left feeling sick and weak, losing my hair and my dignity?" He shook his head. "I've been through this before, remember? I watched Denise go through it. I know what's coming." "Then we make every day count, every single day. But we fight, Dalton, please." He took my hands in his. "We just found each other again. After 47 years. We got 9 months. 9 perfect months. That's more than most people get for a second chance." 9 months isn't enough. 50 years wouldn't be enough. "I know." His eyes were wet now. "I know, sweetheart. But I'm not going to spend whatever time I have left in a hospital room if I don't have to." "So you're just giving up?" "I'm choosing how I want to live." He squeezed my hands. "I want to live whatever time I have left really living. With you, making memories, not fighting a battle I can't win." I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream and throw things and demand that the universe give us more time. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw a peace I couldn't disturb. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay, we do this your way." That night, we sat on the porch with a bottle of wine and a notebook. "Let's make a list," Dalton said. "Everything we want to do. Everything we didn't get to do 47 years ago. A bucket list? I prefer to think of it as a living list. Things we want to do while we're still living." So we wrote, go dancing, visit the ocean, write letters to our children, see the Grand Canyon, have a real date, dress up, fancy restaurant, a whole thing, learn something new together, say everything we never got to say. We started the next day. For Go Dancing, we found a swing dancing class at the community center. We were by far the oldest people there. Dalton's knees protested, my back ached. We forgot half the steps, but we laughed more than we had in years, moving across that floor like we were young again. For Visit the Ocean, we drove to Myrtle Beach. We stayed in a hotel right on the water, and every morning we walked the beach at sunrise, holding hands, watching the waves. Dalton collected shells for his granddaughter. I took pictures on my phone, trying to capture the way the light looked on the water, knowing I never could. One evening, as we sat on the beach watching the sunset, Dalton said, "I'm not afraid of dying, you know." "You should be," I said. "I'm terrified." "I've had a good life. 2 good lives, really. And this second one with you, these past 9 months, they've been worth everything." "How can you be so calm about this?" "Because I'm not leaving anything unsaid. I'm not leaving anything undone. I'm living the life I want right up until the end." He turned to look at me. "That's all anyone can ask for, really." For Write Letters to Our Children, we spent a weekend composing letters. "Not goodbye letters," Dalton insisted. "Living letters. Letters about what we'd learned, what we hoped for them, what we wanted them to know." I wrote to Rachel, "Love is never convenient. It doesn't come when you're ready or when it makes sense. But when it comes, be brave enough to take it. For the Grand Canyon, we went in November. The air was cold, the views were spectacular, and Dalton's headaches were getting worse, but he never complained. We stood at the edge of the South Rim, looking out at that vast, impossible space, and I thought, this is what love feels like, this vast, impossible, terrifying, beautiful thing. I don't regret it, I told him. These past 10 months, even knowing how it ends, I don't regret any of it. Good, he said, because I don't either. For have a real date, we went all out. I bought a new dress, navy blue with a bit of sparkle. Dalton wore a suit I helped him pick out. We went to the nicest restaurant in Asheville, the kind of place where the portions are small and the prices are ridiculous and the food is art. We held hands across the table, we drank champagne, we talked about our first date 48 years ago, a movie and cheap pizza, and kissing in his car afterward because neither of us wanted the night to end. If you could go back, I asked him, and tell your 24-year-old self anything, what would it be? He thought about it. I'd tell him that the girl who breaks his heart at the train station comes back, that he should be patient, that everything works out the way it's supposed to. Would he believe you? No, Dalton laughed. He'd probably tell me I was crazy. What about you? He asked. What would you tell your 23-year-old self? I'd tell her to be brave, to get on the train, to stop being so afraid of the life she deserves. I swallowed hard. But then we wouldn't have had the lives we had. Rachel and Simon wouldn't exist. Your daughters wouldn't exist. No, he agreed, they wouldn't, and I can't imagine a world without them. So maybe we wouldn't change anything after all. Maybe, he said. Or maybe we'd just tell our younger selves to find their way back to each other sooner. For learn something new together, we took a pottery class. We were terrible at it. Everything we made looked lopsided and strange. But we kept the pieces anyway, misshapen bowls and crooked mugs, proof that we'd tried something new, that we'd kept learning right up until the end. And for say everything we never got to say, well, that one took the longest. It was December now. Christmas was 2 weeks away. Dalton's headaches were constant. He'd lost weight. He slept more and more. We sat on the porch on a cold afternoon, wrapped in blankets, watching the winter birds at the feeder I'd put up. I need to tell you something, I said. Something I should have told you 47 years ago. Okay. I loved you so much it scared me. That day at the train station when I told you I needed time to think, the truth was I knew my answer. I knew I wanted to spend my life with you. But I was so afraid of that much love, that much need. I'd never felt anything that big before, and I didn't know how to hold it. And now? Now I know. I know that love is supposed to be big and scary and overwhelming. That's how you know it's real. I reached for his hand. I love you, Dalton Kershaw. I loved you when I was 23, and I love you now at 72, and I'll love you for whatever time we have left. He brought my hand to his lips and kissed it gently. I need to tell you something, too. What? That day at the train station, after you left, I almost came after you. I got as far as your apartment building. I stood outside for 2 hours, trying to work up the courage to knock on your door and tell you that I didn't care if you were scared, that we'd figure it out together, that I'd wait as long as it took. Why didn't you? Because you'd asked me to let you go, and I loved you enough to respect that, even when it broke me. He paused, his eyes distant with memory. But every year on August 14th, I'd think about knocking on that door. Even after I married Denise, even after I had children. Some part of me was always standing outside your apartment, wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to fight for you. I'm sorry I made you wait 47 years. Don't be. We got here eventually. That's what matters. We sat in silence for a while, watching the cardinals and chickadees compete for seeds. The winter sun was weak, but it painted everything gold anyway. Merritt, Dalton said softly, I need you to promise me something. Anything. When I'm gone, don't stop living. Don't go back to that lonely house and your Tuesday tomato routine. Keep the garden growing. Keep taking that pottery class, even though you're terrible at it, he smiled. Keep being brave. I don't know if I can be brave without you. Yes, you can. You're the bravest person I know. You just didn't believe it until now. He squeezed my hand. Promise me. I promise, I whispered, though I wasn't sure I meant it. Christmas came cold and clear. Rachel flew in from Oregon with her husband and 2 of my grandchildren. Dalton's daughters drove down from Weaverville with their families. We crammed into Dalton's small house, our house now, and it was chaos and noise and exactly what we needed. The grandchildren ran around, hyped up on cookies and excitement. The adults made too much food and told stories and laughed in that slightly desperate way people laugh when they know time is short. After dinner, after the presents were opened and the children were watching a movie in the living room, Dalton pulled me aside. Come with me, he said. I have something for you. He led me to the bedroom and pulled a small box from his nightstand drawer. Not a ring box, something smaller. I was going through my things a few months ago, he said, and I found this. I'd kept it all these years, moved it from house to house, never quite able to throw it away. He handed me the box. Inside was a black and white photo, creased and faded. It was us, 48 years ago, at the lake. I was wearing cut-off shorts and a bikini top, laughing at something off camera. Dalton had his arm around me, looking at me like I was the only person in the world. I remember that day, I said softly. Your friend Tommy took this picture. We swam until sunset, and then we built a fire, and you burned the hot dogs. You said they had character, Dalton laughed. You were always kind about my cooking. I was in love. Everything tasted good. He pulled out another photo, this one more recent. It was from our trip to Myrtle Beach. The 2 of us on the beach at sunset, silver-haired and wrinkled and grinning like teenagers. Maureen took this, he said, when she came to visit last month. I asked her to print it for me. He held the 2 photos side by side. 48 years between them. 2 different lives, 2 different versions of ourselves, but the same love, somehow, the same look in our eyes. We made it back to each other, he said. After everything, we made it back. I couldn't speak. I just held those photos and cried while Dalton wrapped his arms around me. That's your real Christmas present, he said into my hair. Proof that love doesn't end. It just changes shape. It waits. And when you're ready, it finds you again. Part 9, January. The new year came quietly. No big celebrations, no resolutions. Just Dalton and me, sitting on the porch at midnight, wrapped in blankets, watching our neighbors set off fireworks down the street. Another year, Dalton said. I didn't think I'd make it to this one. Don't talk like that. It's not morbid, it's grateful. I'm grateful for every day I get, every hour. He kissed my forehead. Every minute with you. By mid-January, Dalton needed help getting out of bed. The headaches were unbearable. He'd stopped eating much. His daughters came to visit more often, staying for days at a time, helping me care for him. We moved a hospital bed into the living room so he could see the garden, watch the birds, be part of the life of the house. Hospice nurses came and went. They were kind, efficient, and far too young to understand what we were losing. Read to me, Dalton asked one afternoon. He was having a good day, alert and present. What do you want to hear? Anything. Your voice. I just want to hear your voice. So I read to him. Poetry mostly. Mary Oliver and Billy Collins and Wendell Berry. Poems about love and loss and the stubborn persistence of hope. Between poems, we talked. About his daughters, about my children, about the grandchildren and great-grandchildren we'd never see grow up. About the garden and whether I'd plant tomatoes or peppers this year. About nothing and everything. Do you believe in heaven? He asked me one day. I don't know. Do you? I'd like to think there's something. Some place where Denise is waiting to tell me everything I did wrong raising the girls. He smiled weakly. Some place where, eventually, when you're ready, you'll find me again. Don't, I said. Don't talk about me finding you again. You're not going anywhere. But we both knew that wasn't true. Valentine's Day arrived on a Thursday. Dalton was sleeping most of the time now, drifting in and out of consciousness. The hospice nurse said it would be soon. Days, maybe hours. I sat beside his bed, holding his hand, watching the shallow rise and fall of his chest. "Happy Valentine's Day," I whispered, knowing he probably couldn't hear me. "Remember our first Valentine's Day? You gave me that stuffed teddy bear holding a heart. I kept it for years, until Rachel claimed it for her room." His eyes fluttered open. "Merritt? I'm here. I'm right here. Love you," he murmured. "Always loved you." "I love you too, so much." He smiled, just a little, and then drifted back to sleep. That night, I climbed into the hospital bed with him. It wasn't made for two people, but I didn't care. I lay beside him, my head on his shoulder, listening to his heartbeat, counting each breath like it was precious. Because it was precious, all of it. Every moment we'd had together, the young love we'd lost, the decades we'd spent apart, these perfect, painful 11 months we'd found each other again. "Thank you," I whispered into the darkness. "Thank you for finding me at the grocery store. Thank you for asking me to coffee. Thank you for loving me when I was too scared to love you back. Thank you for teaching me how to be brave." I felt his hand tighten around mine, just a little, just enough. "And thank you," I continued, "for giving me a second chance, for showing me that it's never too late, that love doesn't have an expiration date, that even at 72, you can still feel like you're 23 and falling in love for the first time." The hours passed. I dozed and woke and dozed again. Sometime around 4 in the morning, I felt his breathing change, slower, shallower. "It's okay," I told him. "You can go. I'll be okay. I promised you I'd be brave, remember? I'll keep that promise." At 4:47 a.m., Dalton took his last breath. Just like that. Quiet and peaceful, with my hand in his, and the first light of dawn coming through the window. I stayed there, holding him, until the sun came up, until the birds started singing at the feeder outside, until his daughters arrived, and I had to let someone else take care of him. I'm standing in the produce section at Kroger. It's a Tuesday morning, and I'm testing avocados. It's been a year since Dalton died. A year of grief and healing and learning to live in a world without him. A year of keeping my promises. I kept the garden growing, planted tomatoes and peppers and herbs that attracted butterflies. Maureen and Patricia came to help me weed it, and we told stories about Dalton while our hands were in the dirt. I kept taking pottery classes. I'm still terrible at it, but my crooked mugs make me smile now instead of frustrating me. I sold Dalton's house, our house, and moved into a small apartment nearby. Not because I was running away, but because I was moving forward, the way he'd have wanted me to. I see his daughters regularly. We've become friends, bonded by our love for a man who taught us all how to live fully, even when time was short. I video chat with Rachel every week, and last month I flew to Oregon to visit. She and I scattered some of Dalton's ashes at the ocean, the same beach where he and I had watched the sunrise together. And every August 14th, I visit his grave. I bring flowers, and I sit on the grass, and I tell him about my year, about the grandchildren and the garden and the terrible pottery I keep making. I tell him I'm still being brave, because I am. I'm braver than I ever thought I could be. I'm squeezing an avocado when I hear a voice behind me. Those ones are better. I turn around. It's a man about my age, maybe a little older, with silver hair and kind eyes. He's pointing to a different pile of avocados. "The ones you're looking at are overripe," he explains. "These ones here, see how they give just a little when you press them? That's what you want." I smile. "Thank you. I usually just guess and hope for the best." "I'm Everett," he says, holding out his hand. "Merritt," I reply, shaking it. "Nice to meet you, Merritt. You shop here often?" I think about lying, about being polite and non-committal and safe. But then I remember Dalton. I remember his laughter and his courage and the way he taught me that it's never too late to be brave. "Every Tuesday morning," I say, "when they restock the produce." Everett grins. "Me too. Funny we haven't run into each other before." Funny, I agree. We stand there in the produce section, two old people with silver hair and reading glasses, and I think, maybe life gives us more than one second chance. Maybe, if we're very lucky, it gives us as many chances as we need to get it right. Would you like to get coffee sometime? Everett asks. I know a great place nearby. I smile, feeling something flutter in my chest. Hope, maybe, or possibility, or just the simple joy of knowing that love, in all its forms, at any age, is always worth being brave for. I'd like that, I say. I'd like that very much. If you're listening to this and you're wondering if it's too late for you, if you're 60 or 70 or 80 and you think your chance at love has passed, I'm here to tell you it hasn't. Love doesn't have an age limit. It doesn't care about gray hair or reading glasses or medication schedules. It doesn't care if you've been married before or if you've lost people you loved or if you think you're too old to feel butterflies in your stomach. Dalton gave me 11 months. 11 months of laughter and tears and living more fully than I had in decades. And even though it ended in heartbreak, I wouldn't trade those 11 months for anything. Because he taught me that it's never too late to be brave. It's never too late to take a chance. It's never too late to say yes to love, even when, especially when, it scares you. So if you're out there squeezing avocados in a grocery store, wondering if you've missed your chance, you haven't. Your chance is right now, today, this moment. Be brave enough to take it. This is Merritt Calloway, signing off. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go out there and write your own. This is Merritt Calloway, signing off. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go out there and write your own. And if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that it's never too late for love, please don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button. Your support helps me share more stories like this. Stories about real life, real love, and real second chances. I'll see you in the next one.